What is product-led growth? I'm a growth manager at a 350-person B2B software company based in Sweden. And the aim of my game is, well, growth. The only thing is, beyond hearing the words product-led growth, I didn't really know what it was. Meaning, I hadn't yet discovered Lenny's newsletter, or Reforge, or Elena Werner, or Wes Bush, or Cal Polyar, or any of the PLG gurus out there. What is product-led growth? Let's start with the typical go-to-markets. We've got marketing-led growth, which is where marketing creates inbound leads for sales organization. Sales-led growth, where sales create their own potential customers through outbound and traditional sales-led methods. And product-led growth, where the product creates potential new customers by acquiring and activating users. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to combine sales-led and marketing-led. Some documentation keeps them separate, some lump them in together, so don't shoot the messenger. If we then compare the two go-to-markets and create a simple matrix split by acquisition, activation, and monetization, it becomes much simpler to see the differences between them. Product-led growth can then be defined as, and I'm quoting the father of product-led growth, product-led growth is a business strategy that relies on using your product as the main vehicle to acquire, activate, and retain customers. Product-led growth then involves some form of free access to your product, either through a time-limited free trial or a freemium version of your product. Let me tell you, the decision to go with free trial or freemium is incredibly important for your business, so stick around for my tips on how to think about that. Why is PLG the hottest new thing in the world of SaaS, you ask? I think it's a combination of factors. Buyer behavior, macroeconomic climate, and product development best practices. Let's walk through each one. Buyer behavior. First, and I would argue most importantly, buyer behavior has been changing. In a more automated world with online shopping, receptionless hotels, and improved website/digital experiences, people are used to spending more on products and services without speaking to a human being. That doesn't mean every single person wants to buy SaaS products without speaking to someone, but it does mean prospects are more comfortable with putting that credit card info in and checking out without speaking to a salesperson. Macroeconomic climate. Up until recently, we lived in what is referred to as a free money era. That is, with low global interest rates, investors were incentivized to plow their money into tech companies to fuel growth at all costs. What you're looking at now is the Federal Reserve Fund's effective interest rate. As you can see, when we rebounded out of COVID, inflation was getting out of control, and in response, central banks raised interest rates with the goal of restricting the money supply. Naturally, as the cost of borrowing from the Fed increases, investors can achieve higher returns by simply holding onto the cash. This means it becomes less attractive for investors to lend money to startups. And those startups need to make more money faster in order to compete. I realize explaining our entire global financial situation in 2 sentences is obviously oversimplifying. So if you want to learn more, go watch a few videos about why we are where we are. In a growth at all costs era, companies were spending unlimited money on marketing and advertising at virtually any ROI, hiring people in all areas of the business, including building out large sales teams to maximize the average sales price of each deal. Which in some cases actually meant large sales teams with lower efficiency. But in a growth at all costs world, that was fine because any revenue per head was better than efficient revenue per head. Fast forward to now, when global interest rates have risen sharply and the cost of borrowing money has increased, and tech companies all over the world have to prioritize efficient growth, making profitability a priority. Product development best practices. The way I like to think about this is through a Reforge framework about why growth wins. That is to say, product best practices have evolved and growth is now a key part of product development. Gone are the days when product teams built something and chucked it over the fence to marketing and sales to maximize the value out of it. So, we have 4 points to walk through to explain why growth wins and how that has affected product development best practices. Distribution is more competitive and expensive. Paid ads were once the cost-effective hack to get more eyeballs on your product or service. But it's much more competitive than it once was, driving the cost up. That goes for most types of distribution, influencers, newsletters, sponsorships, etc. It's all more expensive than it once was because there's so many entities trying to take those spots. The life cycle of channels and tactics has accelerated. Marketing secrets used to take a little longer to become not secrets. Not secrets. honestly. Let's go with widely known. Anyway, since the spread of information is so fast now, channels/tactics become saturated much quicker. Look at Instagram ads versus TikTok ads. Instagram ads had such a long life cycle before they became saturated. TikTok, on the other hand, went much quicker. Access to data has increased as costs have decreased. My favorite way to think of this is through the evolution of computing power and memory, since both are required for data processing and consumption. Just 23 years ago, in the year 2000, the per terabyte cost of memory was $700,000. Yes, $700,000. Today, it's less than $2,000. Not so long ago, access to product and marketing data was expensive and complicated, meaning there wasn't the same degree of data proliferation, so not all teams had access to make data-driven decisions. Now, you can assume all of your competitors in every field of tech are utilizing product and marketing data to optimize their business, and if they aren't, they should be. The lines between product, marketing, engineering, and sales have blurred. As I said, gone are the days when techie people built something and chucked it over the fence to the creative people to spin up campaigns to bring in prospects that they can chuck over another fence to the salespeople to close. Feedback loops within companies have become much tighter, and the companies who figure out how to process and act on those feedback loops will create the best user experience and the best user journeys and make the most money. Okay, Alex, we get that. So how does product-led growth fit in? Well, product-led growth is one of the answers to these developments. It's a way of bringing growth into traditional tech companies in order to move with the times and win the race you're in. What's the upside of launching a product-led growth model? Okay, marketing 101. You're trying to be in the mind of as much of your target audience as possible. But we know with the 95-5 rule that 95% of your target audience aren't in market right now. Depending how competitive your market is, being in mind of the 5% isn't easy, but it isn't rocket science either. With the right low funnel content and some creative advertising, it's doable. But how do you make yourselves front and center for the other 95%? The idea with launching a product-led growth model is that you give your target audience a frictionless way to try your product, i.e. free, because free is less friction than not free. You're then supposed to leverage this frictionless journey to spread your product amongst a larger part of your target audience than you would normally be able to distribute it to yourself using sales and marketing. This should lead to what is commonly referred to as a groundswell. That is, large parts of your target audience using a free version of your product and hopefully transitioning to a paid version of your product when they drift into the 5% in-market audience. You see? Not only that, but having a groundswell acts as lubricant for your other go-to-markets. Let's say that you have a sales team reaching out to prospects. The idea is that with a groundswell, more people have used or heard of your product before, thus making it easier to approach higher value prospects because, well, they've heard of your company, rather than it being this completely cold interaction. That's the idea anyway. How do I transition to a PLG model? Firstly, what do I mean by traditional tech companies? I'm mainly referring to companies with a marketing-led / sales-led go-to-market. That is, get introduced to the product by marketing or sales and then go into a sales cycle to be shown how the product will fit into your business. Up until last year, we marketed our product with various marketing activities, then prospects came in as leads that our sales team guided through a trial until they signed a contract to become a customer. That means there was no way to demo or try our product without speaking to a sales team. But for all the reasons above, we decided to embark on a journey to launch a free version of Funnel and transition to also having a product-led growth go-to-market. Yes, I said also. We didn't just launch a free version and fire our fantastic sales team. That's not how this works. And if you're in any way thinking about this as a way to replace your sales team, it's gonna go wrong. Almost all successful PLG companies also have sales teams closing deals. I've got 4 areas you need to be thinking about, talking about, putting in extra work for, and generally being aware of. Number 1, freemium or free trial. There's a reason this is the very first chapter in Wes Bush's book, because it really is important to figure out before you get started. Let's map out the differences. A free trial model is giving a limited or full version of your product to users for a limited time period. A freemium model is giving a limited version of your product away indefinitely. Wes has a bunch of material about how to choose between the two, so definitely check that out. Number 2, company culture. When your business has been built on a purely sales-led motion and your product has been gated behind a sales team since its inception, it's a big change to introduce a start for free button on your website. So much of your momentum has been and is created by talented salespeople closing big brands at high ASPs, and you build departments, teams, and culture around it. Introducing something that could potentially stifle that momentum is complicated and requires a little bit more care than you think. You need to figure out when to handle things with white gloves and when to be bold. I realize that's a fluffy sentence, so let me give a perfect example involving marketing data, because after all, we're a marketing data hub. Attribution in a sales-led org is important. Regardless of my feelings about it, or if you have a commission-free organization like ours, attribution is and always will be important and a point of tension. And when a new go-to-market like PLG pops up, you need to try and understand if, when, and how it's bearing fruit, or if, when, and how it's contributing to your bottom line. Number 3. Internal processes. Processes. I have such a love-hate relationship with processes. Businesses can't run without them, but at the same time, once you put processes in place, they can slow things down and often last for much longer than they were intended, because teams shape their ways of working around those processes and etc., etc. During our SLG to PLG journey, I've tried to push us to hold off on implementing new processes by asking teams and managers to be patient and see how things develop before implementing a process. Middle managers often want to implement processes when new situations or changes arise, and rightly so. They want to protect their team's productivity and output. But designing new processes too soon means they aren't designed with the full picture in mind, and since processes often outlive their intended purpose, they need to be well designed and fit for purpose. Naturally, the argument you'll be met with is that it's chaotic with lots of changes and no processes, and to a degree it is, but it's about striking the balance. So that's the lesson. Talk to managers that are affected by the changes you're implementing and strike a balance between chaos and processifying everything. Processifying, I like that. Number 4, aligning teams. Aligning teams is a big challenge and really hard for practitioners implementing PLG to do. This is where you need to push your leaders to align teams. How do you do that? What should you ask them to say? I learned that the reason for why you're implementing PLG in the first place needs to be reiterated over and over again. Whatever your why for doing PLG in the first place is, needs to be drilled into the entire organization so they can justify the trade-offs, the disruption, and the challenges. PLG isn't an overnight success, and if the why isn't clear amongst every single team, it'll be questioned and the friction will become too great. So, work on your leaders. Push them to talk more about the why so your entire organization can help PLG become successful as quickly as possible. What are some successful examples of PLG? Lots of infographics to choose from that I've seen over the past 18 months, but I chose this one from OpenView because I've been following their operating partner Kyle Poyer for a while now and always find his content really clear and informative, and because I like the maturity axis on the graphic. I'm sure you're familiar with one or two of these companies. Maybe you knew that they leverage product-led growth, maybe not. So, I wanted to call out a couple of companies to explain how PLG works for them. But before I do that, I'm throwing another Reforge framework at you. This is Brian Belfort's Wheel of Fits framework. He has some articles about it you can find in the description or by searching why product market fit isn't enough. But if you really want to understand it in depth, go and check out Reforge. I did the growth series and the retention and engagement courses that were both extremely valuable. Here you can see 4 areas: product, the functionality of your product and the problems it solves; market, the target audience you're solving a problem for, its size and buying power; model, how you charge, when you charge, the amount you charge, and what you charge for; and channel, your distribution method for reaching your target audience. I know this looks a little overwhelming, but if I strip it down, the idea is that each one needs to make sense with the other in order to scale. Here's an example. Let's say you're a product cybersecurity platform for market SMBs that costs model $100 a month via a contract, and you do channel outbound enterprise sales. Unfortunately, that just ain't gonna work. Enterprise sales is too resource heavy and expensive for such a low ASV, so your business will simply not work. Instead, imagine a product, subscription shaving razor service, for market, middle-class men with beards that costs model $12 a month with a 1-month credit card free trial, and you do channel, paid ads on TikTok. All of a sudden, all these align and you've got yourself a business that scales. Now, With that framework in mind, let's look at 2 successful PLG companies from this list. Let's take Slack first. With PLG, you really want users to acquire other users. This is the type of growth loop which I'll touch on later. In Slack's case, for the product to be useful, it literally requires you to add other people. I don't know about you, but a Slack workspace all by yourself sounds pretty sad. So for Slack, a model, totally frictionless PLG motion, is the obvious choice because they can benefit from channel viral acquisition. Take HubSpot on the other hand. CRMs aren't super easy to implement. They eventually require widespread adoption within a company, and they're typically conceived within one technical team. So what HubSpot did was figure out how they could solve the challenge for a market, less complex segment of their target audience. This worked really well with their channel content flywheel, as their target market looked at HubSpot as industry thought leaders. Then a model, PLG motion, made it easier for more of that target audience to get started with HubSpot and hopefully grow into paying customers down the line, and of course, build that huge groundswell. How do I optimize the user onboarding process? Lauren Isford is the former head of growth at Airtable and recently became head of growth at Notion. She was a guest for one of the Reforge courses I took, and then I listened to her episode on Lenny's podcast, and she explained that the area they saw the biggest optimization was by overhauling their onboarding. I'm paraphrasing, but I believe Lauren created a product team dedicated to onboarding in order to get more users to value quicker on a free plan. But why is onboarding so challenging to nail? Well, I have 2 main reasons. 1, it differs entirely depending on your product. There isn't really a playbook, only theories. And 2, if you've had a traditional sales-led model, you've benefited from human glue. So, point 1 first. There are tons of theories about optimizing onboarding, such as quick time to value, friction for learning moments, onboarding checklists, tooltips, progressive disclosure, and more. But as for what to show when and how, it's unique to your product. Airtable's onboarding just isn't the same as Pinterest's. I don't have a silver bullet to know what features to show when, but because there aren't already enough theories, I'm gonna give you one that's really helped us. So let's imagine a product as an upside down triangle. Without any onboarding, you simply drop a user into a product and expect them to figure out what features are important for them to understand first. What you want to try and do is figure out how to flip the triangle and introduce them to a more limited experience of your product based on what they want to achieve. Then guide them to experience the rest of your product in due time. As for what to show when, it's up to you to test, learn, and iterate your way to a delightful onboarding experience. Now, point 2. With a sales-led model, you typically have a few human touch points between acquisition and monetization. At Funnel, our typical journey was a first meeting with a junior salesperson to understand your needs, a second meeting with a more senior salesperson, and then a 2-week guided trial of the product where we had a solutions consultant help you with the more technical aspects of implementation. That has worked amazingly well so far for our business and allowed us to achieve incredible growth. But it's also a lot of human touch points. Over time, these human touch points allow you to underinvest in certain areas of the product experience and instead hold things together with human glue. Human glue can be amazing. It can lead to higher ASPs, longer LTV, reduced churn, and better adoption. But it's also expensive, and depending on who your product is for, might not be scalable past a certain point. With that in mind, I encourage you to do an audit of some kind, looking at all the areas you think you've had human glue holding things together. These things are often referred to as UX dead ends, UX debt, or cognitive friction. It's areas of your product where things aren't very seamless or intuitive because a user wouldn't normally have to figure it out. They'd have it explained to them and they can get from one place to the next. I haven't touched here on onboarding metrics, but since the next section is about PLG metrics, I'll touch on it in that section instead. What metrics should I track for PLG? Before I dive into common PLG metrics, I want to preface that you might have to first rely on signals over metrics. Depending on how big you are and how much data you have, in the early days you might have to compromise on the way you measure success and optimize your PLG efforts. PLG metrics aren't always super easy to define, track, and measure. So in the early days, you might have to look at the signals that you're going in the right direction and pair that with your experience/intuition to know whether to push the gas or pull the brakes. I know it might not sound like the most helpful piece of advice because you're like, okay, Alex, tell me what to measure so I can implement it and show my manager things are going great. But the reality is that you might have to look for signals rather than work from statistically significant changes in the product metrics, because that takes time, and time is money, my friend. Setup moment, aha moment, habit moment, and active users. For those unfamiliar with the definitions of these moments, I'll just run through their industry definitions, then talk about why they're important. Setup moment. The user has performed the necessary actions to set up for the core value proposition. Aha moment. The user has experienced the core value prop for the first time. Habit moment. The user has established a habit around the core value proposition. Active user. The user interacts in some way with your product within a given period of time. Why are they important for PLG? As I acknowledged in the onboarding section of this video, it's really hard to know what comes when and how in order for a user to experience value of your product and ultimately say, all right, this thing's cool and really helps me, I guess I'll start using it. These moments help you break down key moments you want the user to experience, then try to develop your product to increase the number of people experiencing each moment. The reason you want people to experience these moments is because they should correlate with monetization, i.e., you should have proved with data that people who achieve your setup moment are X times more likely to monetize, and so on with each metric, so you build in probability to monetize in each moment. But Alex, we're so early in our journey. Finding correlation will take us so much time and we don't have enough analysts. I hear you. At some point, you need to find moments that correlate with monetization. But to get started, look at your existing go-to-market. Speak to your sales team. Understand from them when the customer experiences that aha moment and use that. Then derive what needs to happen from a setup perspective in order to see that. A good place to start is to ask, is our product a daily, weekly, or monthly product? I promise that if you try to answer that question, you'll learn enough in the exploration to figure out your habit moment. These moments do require some brain crunching work, so get the right people together in a room and do the digging in the data until you figure out what these moments are for you. What are common challenges in implementing PLG? In this section, I've broken it down into the following subsections: monetization, data availability, and dipping to fly higher. I'm going to say attribution is a tough one here. Users don't care about your channel mix or your tracking or internal business processes, or your established ways of dishing out credit. They explore the value of your product how and when they want to. That means they might sign up, wait a few weeks, speak to someone, go cold, come back a few months later, start a free trial, have another conversation, etc., etc. So for me, it's about trying to understand how much revenue PLG is driving so you can figure out how to improve it. And besides completely new, completely self-serve revenue, it's pretty tricky. My advice is to try and not get bogged down on the details of attribution, but understand how you think PLG is contributing to your business. But don't make it an exact science. Just be close enough so that you can make optimization decisions. Data availability. Let me preface by saying we have a pretty advanced self-serve data setup with a centralized BI team who work on facilitating data into Looker where other teams can do analysis. I mean, we are a marketing data company after all. With that said, new go-to-markets bring new data asks. To make PLG work, you'll need a way of stitching together your product data with your commercial data, assuming they're in different places. We've found that we often need to view things like acquisition source with product events. I won't go into our tech stack now because that's probably another video in itself. But before you get started, ask yourself the simple question: do we have the ability to measure the things we would want to measure based on all of the learnings from this video? Then map them out and highlight what you do or don't have visibility over. Dipping to fly higher. All businesses want their growth curves to go up and to the right. With that said, introducing a free plan is a big change and it bets on your product acquiring, activating, and monetizing users. If you imagine the predictability of an established go-to-market compared with the unpredictability of a brand new go-to-market, there may be a period where launching a free version of your product may disrupt and destabilize current practices, or even cause some key metrics to drop for a short period. I mean, ideally, it equates to overall net positive outcome, but that isn't always the case. I want to offer some advice I heard from renowned growth expert Hila Chu. And I'm paraphrasing because I can't find the original quote, but she essentially says one mistake companies make is pulling the plug on long-term growth initiatives too soon. So if you have conviction, be patient. Many businesses have had to take risks to make it big. Another anecdote I heard in this area was from the Spotify CTO, who said on a podcast that they twice made changes that sent the company into negative growth and the board was concerned. But both times they believed in the fruit that those changes would bear. And look at those guys now. My biggest advice is to acquire the knowledge you need to make decisions with conviction. Conviction is so important to be able to make difficult decisions quickly on a daily basis. And let's face it, you can't always make everyone happy. So you need to be convinced that you're making the right call. That was a monster of a video. I think our longest one ever, maybe. But if you made it this far, great job. You're clearly dedicated to learning all about product-led growth. That's it for today. Like and subscribe where you'll learn more about digital marketing, marketing data and analytics, and data visualization tips and tricks. All the great content you need to shortcut your way to being a better marketer.